This is the first time since the appointment of Marco Leas, I believe, that there was a PCO vacancy appointment. Is that correct? There might have been one after that, but that seems like the most recent I know of.
What, for the council?
No, just in general for our PCOs in Snohomish County.
Jared Mead.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Jared Mead,
Jared
that
Mead,
was the
Jared
most
Mead.
recent one. My apologies, yes. So we did have one sooner. But yeah, it's not a very common occurrence, so it's kind of the most exciting thing that happened for a while, at least in County Council District 3, away from Jared Mead's stomping ground. So thanks again, and we're gonna get started. So we're gonna start first with just brief introductions. I'm gonna ask the candidates, don't go into your sump speeches. I know it's tempting. Just tell us who you are, what you've been doing for the last few years, your short resume. We'll give you about a minute each. I'm not going to time you on this. We'll just go on the honor system, and we will start randomly. We're going to start in the center and work our way out. So we're going to do Colin, and then Chris, and then we'll alternate on the way out. So, Colin, would you like to start?
Sure, yep. Make sure everyone can hear me with the mask on.
Yes.
Great. My name's Colin McMahon. I'm a public defender. I've been a public defender here in Snohomish County for just over 7 years. And in that time, I've also been involved in the Democratic Party as a PCO, as a delegate for Bernie Sanders in 2016. I'm currently living in Linwood 30, so I already have a wonderful PCO in my precinct that I was not able to, or wouldn't dream of running against anyway. Most recently, I've been elected as the second vice chair for the Snohomish County Democrat Central Committee. I'm also involved in, when I was in the 21st, I was involved in the endorsement committees and the issues committees. And many of you may know me from running the recall of Adam Fortney that started back in 2021. So that's a little bit brief of what I've done lately. I'm also serving on the Mental Health Advisory Council for Disability Rights Washington as a trustee for the Snohomish County Bar Association. And yeah, happy to be here.
Great.
And I'm Chris Ack. I'm a longtime resident of the 3rd District, Linwood and Edmonds, wife, working wife and mom. Years in the corporate sector, but decided actually a few years ago to jump to do something that was way more meaningful, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But bring with me those operational skills, the management skills, the ability to collaborate and work across different points of view with different people from various perspectives. I have had the amazing opportunity to work at nonprofits like Cocoon House and Volunteers of America Western Washington, where I was recently hired because I could bring that corporate experience with me and help bring structure and operational management and coaching and leadership. So specifically to bring those skills from another sector with me to nonprofits. I've had the opportunity to work with leaders in business and in government and with community groups to actually work together in the last couple of years to come to solutions that really make sense and are well-rounded, right? You're looking at different perspectives.
Great, thank you. Just want to keep everything even here.
Can I say one more
Yep,
thing?
yep.
Okay. So my journey and true life's goal is to make a difference and give back so others have the opportunities that I have had.
Okay, thank you. All right, going down the table. Sorry, my eyes are not that good, and that I printed that out.
That's all right.
Sorry,
No
introduce yourself, and then I
Yes.
can read from the distance.
My name is Naz Lashkari, and it is with great excitement that I'm seeking the appointment to the Snohomish County Council District Number 3. I'm a liberal Democrat, and I'm adamantly pro-choice. I bring skills and knowledge developed through long-time civic engagement in public service with the City of Linwood and Snohomish County, while serving as the chair and vice chair of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I implemented successful initiatives such as the development of race and social justice coordinator position to build relationships between and among our city staff and diverse community members. I also spearheaded the All Are Welcome campaign to advance the process of creating a more inclusive culture in Linwood. I currently serve on the Linwood Planning Commission as well as serving on the board of Snohomish County Public Facilities District, which includes the Linwood Convention Center, the Edmonds Art Center, and the Angel of the Winds Arena in Everett. I work with Seymour Community as healthcare manager, and I am on the front line providing care for our residents. I know firsthand the inequities affecting members of our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Apologies, I'm just trying to get through everybody. 7 candidates, it's a hard one, so.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going back over on this side. Ms. Crosby?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Julieta Tamirano Crosby. I'm a currently City Council member. My background in community service and personal life experience and immigrant to this country not only reflects the demographics of Snohomish County, but also trust credible voices who speaks with for and for the people for Snohomish County. I was recently appointed as a chair of the Snohomish County District. I'm part of the board of the Linwood Food Bank. I work a lot with the diverse community and with the community providing services through vaccine, COVID, and with the food bank as well. So what more I can say? Well, I am also very honored to have received the support for many Democratic local and state officials. The endorsements for Senator John Lovick for second and third round pick, for Representative Cindy Ryu, for the Snohomish County Executive Dave Summers, former Mayor of Linwood Nicole Smith, and former Snohomish County Executive Board Review.
Thank you. I think we're down to Strom.
Your order's gonna get messed up.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware. 7 is not a fun number to divide, but we're gonna make it
I
work.
don't wanna speak twice, so don't come back.
Don't worry.
Hey Shirley, you wanna go get this?
Well, thank you everybody for coming out to this. It's a great turnout. You never know with these political forums, and thanks, Micah, for putting this together in the midst of a family emergency. I know many of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm Strom Peterson, current state representative representing the 21st District, and before that I was on the Edmonds City Council. So recently, as of late, I have been doing legislative work and am incredibly proud of the work that we've done in Olympia. We have the most diverse caucus in the history of the state, and I'm proud to stand with so many of my colleagues in passing the most progressive legislation that we've passed in decades, if not ever. We passed a ban on the sale of high-capacity magazines, a bill that I sponsored for a number of years and then co-sponsored, and my dear friend Senator Mark Leo sponsored it this past year, and we got it through. We've done incredible work on housing, incredible work on environmental issues, and boy, today it's literally raining ash and fire down upon us, so we know that the environment and climate change is a key to, I think, any level of government. That certainly includes the county. So very, very proud of the work that we've done that, and those are the issues that I want to bring back to work on the county. Climate change, housing, the opioid crisis. I've been a leader on that issue in Olympia as well.
All right, I don't want you to get too far out in front of your skis there. We'll get to those issues in just a minute. All right, great. Let's go to, I'm not gonna butcher the last name, but Adrian.
Adrian works.
If you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Adrian Fairley-Manila. I am running for the county council position. I have been running for this position for the last 15 years and can hit the ground running. I spent 12 years on the Edmonds City Council. Before that, I served the state of Washington for 33 years working for social services to include developmental disabilities and mental health. So I have a very long history of doing community service. I've just spent 11 years on the Snohomish County Health District. 6 of those is either chair or vice chair. So I have a lot of experience when it comes to working on county-wide issues. Some of the exciting things that I did on the Edmonds City Council, actually I ended up paying the greatest price for. And I guess I'll get into that a little bit later about my work on the Edmonds City Council and the price I paid for standing up for the democratic values that I believe in. I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I've lived in Edmonds for 35 years. I don't exactly get up and move anywhere. Wait a minute, the same house for 35 years also. So anyway, thank you all.
Very cool. Gotta love that appreciation of the house values. All right.
Yes, I do.
Ms. Chase.
Thank you. I'm gonna stand because I can't even see the whole audience there. My name's Karen Chase, and I'm heartened to see fellow PCOs and fellow Democrats. For those of you who don't know me, I have lived in this district for 20 years. I am currently serving on the Edmonds School Board, and I'm really proud of the work that we're doing on there to service the 20,000 kids in this district, each and every one. And with our over $250 million budget that we've got to manage to make sure that we have equitable access to all the kids. And we're gonna get into that more so I don't get over my skis too much and Mikey yells at me here. Some of the work that I've been doing recently, also as the Washington State School Board Director's legislative rep, is lobbying for fully funding our basic education. Making sure one thing that's coming up next soon that I'm really proud of is advocating with Rep. Byrd for full funding of lunches. Food is a human right. You shouldn't have to pay for it. It should be accessible to all, and I think we can all agree on that. And one of the things that I'm bringing that up is because your job right now is to figure out which of these people, these fine people up here, align with the values that you want to see reflected in Snohomish County. I think that my values, my service on the Edmonds School Board, my service with the 32nd District Democrats, I sit on the NOW, National Organization for Women board, my education, I have a master's in public administration from the Evans School. My first love, which my bachelor's of science in, is marine biology, and I'd like to bring these skills along with my elected and volunteer community experience to what we need at Snohomish County. Together, we can do great things, and I would like to do that as your representatives up there.
All right.
Wait, no.
Oh, you paused too long.
Okay, so it's like, can I say just one thing, because what are you really proud of? The school district, we work with the Snohomish County Labor Council to bring an event called Trade Up, where we connect students with the trades, because there are multiple pathways to success. We haven't been able to do this in 2019, and so we just have it coming up on March 30th. Really excited about that, and there's more, but I'll have to sit down.
All right. So, yeah, as I said, you guys would definitely get a chance to go into anything we don't cover and get into those things in your closing. So, get your pens out, and if there's anything you think of while we're going through this, you'll have a great, I kind of like that better than making you all go first, and then somebody at the end says something, you're like, ooh, I should have gone in on that. So that's kind of the flip in the format, is to try something new. So hopefully it works here. So, trying to go into kind of, don't want to get into a broad question first. So let's just talk about urban growth. What are your thoughts on the Growth Management Act as in relationship to unincorporated Snohomish County and the cities around it, and the lagging investment? I'm sorry, I just switched. And really, what if anything should be done to change our approach to it? For those of you that may not be aware of the Growth Management Act, the intent by the legislature, I believe this was back in the 70s, was to designate certain areas to be annexed by their cities. And in our county region, there's almost all of the inter-county region that's in County District 3 was assigned to cities, but it doesn't seem like cities have actually taken up that mantle and annexed, or those areas have voted to be annexed. So that's kind of the background on the question. So again, what are your thoughts on that, that plan, and what, if anything, should be done to change our approach to it? We're gonna, go ahead.
I can answer. Well, we cannot stop the growth, and the growth we are experiencing right now in Linwood, with the libraries coming and all the buildings and the apartments. We are facing right now, and even though in the city council, we're having discussions, and this coming Monday, we're going to talk specifically for the buildings, the 6,000 apartments that are coming. One of the things they advocate a lot is for affordable housing. We are living in the county, and we are seeing a lot of buildings, but we don't see a lot affordable housing they're building in. So I'm really interested in to see what percentage of these 6,000 apartments they are going to be exactly for affordable housing. I believe the the person who is going to be appointed in the county has to be 100%, a lot of work and communication between the cities, counties, federal, state, federal, city, and council. So that's communication, conversations, and manage that growth.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on the unincorporated Snohomish annexation plans? We'll go down to the end and we'll work our way back this time, and then next time we'll go this way.
I'm sorry, how long do we have to respond?
Just brief. I'm trying to keep these brief, but I don't want to give you guys a hard limit right now. So we'll,
You might need to.
we might need to. Definitely.
Okay.
Got that? I haven't gone yet, yet.
Go ahead.
Keeping it brief with GMAs can be tricky because it's one of the luckiest things around there, other than the fact that the Growth Management Act, I think, is at its inception, and even still, even though we know it needs updating, and I'm working with some of my strong progressive allies in Olympia to do that, is really one of the things that has kept, especially Western Washington, I think, as good of a place to live as it is. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and every time I go back, I just see the sprawl going farther and farther west across the West Mesa, and it's remarkable. It's the damage that happens without proper planning. So while the GMA needs some updates, and we need to work with everybody involved when it comes to, especially as was just said, on affordable housing, we need to make sure that the GMA is intact. And we have some great opportunities to find those wins here in Snohomish County, especially because we do have a little more land available than, say, much of King County. It's a great program. It's done great things to really preserve our communities. We can update it so we can be sure to welcome even more people, the people that are moving into this great state, because it's a great place to live.
All right. Any additional thoughts on the Growth Management Act? And okay, Ms. Frelly, I knew I would have trouble with that. Adrian will work.
Sorry,
Oh,
we're gonna
sorry.
go down the line.
Oh, I was just. that's why I asked for hands real quick. Did I miss one?
That's all right.
All right. Let's go with you. Sorry.
Go ahead, man, I can go.
Go ahead.
Adrian is good.
Adrian.
The GMA, it kind of becomes a big dinosaur in the room in a lot of senses, because every city in this area has met the GMA with doing nothing since it started. And I think that's the most interesting piece to it, is that we don't have to work on, we have never in this area, in the 3rd district, have had to work on creating housing, because it's been a natural movement of housing in this area. The one thing it does do, it talks about levels of housing. And some of the things you're gonna wanna look at are things like transit-oriented development, because frankly, young people, and I see a few of you in the audience, people don't take cars anymore. The younger people are taking transit. So having that sort of development of housing in areas where people don't have to use transit. The other piece to the GMA has to do with the sorts of housing there is, and affordable housing really isn't affordable. If you live in Edmonds, affordable housing right now at this point is $1,400 for a studio apartment in Edmonds. That's the going rate for affordable housing in Edmonds. And that is not affordable. We need to look at low-income housing and subsidized housing. People that work in Edmonds and make minimum wage cannot afford to live in Edmonds. I know of people that live in their cars and live in Arlington but don't drive because they can't afford the gas, so they stay down here all week long in their cars and then go home to Arlington. That isn't a way for us to treat people, I mean, by any sense. So that's part of the GMA too, is creating that level of housing that needs to be created to serve everybody.
Okay. We'll go back. Sorry.
Council has so much important work ahead of us, right? We all do, right? So if you think about being thoughtful with a development plan, and trying to mesh in that, the need, the crisis really for affordable housing, for low-income housing. I've thought a lot about these and reviewed a lot of the issues as planning commissioner. And then certainly in my day job at a place where we're expanding our housing program, we're living and breathing this and having these conversations every day. So as it relates to the GMA, it is, I think, a responsible thing to do to really look at the lack of buildable land that we have in Edmonds, that we have in Linwood, and see how we can focus on the arterials in the unincorporated areas, because it makes so much sense that we focus there first. Multifamily housing, we really look at truly affordable housing, but also while we're making sure the development is responsible. Thank you.
All right. All right, just a reminder, this question is specifically on the GMA and those unincorporateds being brought into the cities, so, we got one more down here and then.
And you got one here.
Well aware.
I do
Coming
that.
down.
I mean, I
Save
love
the
that
best,
right
no,
there.
save someone for last, someone who
Thank
got it. All right, go.
I think with the expansion of the light rail coming to the city of Linwood specifically, and the growth that we are seeing in our area, it is very important to be mindful of the growth and how we are managing this. One of the most important things that I think we need to be cognizant of is annexing these areas that are part of the South Snohomish County, which you see a lot of housing going there, and it seems to me that there is no rhyme or reason to it. Being on the planning commission, looking at what City of Linwood is doing for the next 20 years, there's been a lot of time and money invested in that, and that's a very good plan, which I support very much so. But in the unincorporated Linwood area, there is a lot of development that is happening, and we just want to make sure that it is affordable. However, all of those housing that is coming up, I drive by there because my sister happens to live in the unincorporated Linwood area, and I see the houses that says starting at 700, 800,000, and these are for buying homes for people. And a lot of our young people are not able to get into these because they can't afford it. And so it's very important to be able to manage this growth and also be cognizant of the environment and how we're impacting the green areas and making sure that we are not affecting the, what did you call it, the issues as the fire is coming down the sky. We need to be cognizant of that as we continue to grow, so we don't become a big sprawl that has no rhyme or reason.
All right. Yes, Susan?
Thank you. And thank you for the question. So I live in, I think I can see everyone now. I live in unincorporated Edmonds. I'm in the Esperance district, which is unincorporated, which is fully surrounded by Edmonds. And so thank you for the question, because this comes up. It's like, why isn't annexed? One of the things that we want to think about, because growth is exciting. I mean, I am very excited that we've got new people moving in, but we've got to think about the services and the people impacted. One of the reasons that my area is not been annexed is because lack of engagement with the community. So the community didn't agree because they were not involved in the process. They were not involved in talking about how is the zoning going to impact our neighborhood, right? Because we do want some smart zoning, right? We do know that what's that light rail station comes in right off 228th, on the other side of Ballinger. There's going to be increased traffic. We need to engage the people in unincorporated Snohomish County, Esperance, because we all live on that street. So what kind of services is the county going to provide versus incorporating into Edmonds going to provide? Thus far, ever since I've lived there for 20 years, the people of Esperance have not been happy with the engagement of our elected officials, either at the Snohomish County level, the Edmonds level, on participating in the impact of those regulations that's going to be impacting them. Of course, we need affordable housing. We need access, and we're really proud that right down the street, there's going to be 50 units put in behind,
Yeah, okay.
well, I'm sorry. I'll let you talk about that because that's but it's important that we're engaging the people who are most impacted by the decisions we're making in these commission meetings, in these board meetings. We need to make sure that the zoning regulations are smart for the area, that we are looking at where we're going to be increasing the density, but you can't do it without talking to the people that live there. And so they understand the impact and they understand what if annexing is a smart idea. For instance, if my area annexes, okay, so who are we paying the bills to? Are we going to get sidewalks? Are we going to still, what is the zoning going to be on all the next door neighbors' lots? Those are the questions that we need as decision makers to be asking the community and to be fully transparent before moving forward. Recently, I saw there's an article on Cathcart, I believe, where it was a community very upset that they were presented with a plan of like a community center, but all of a sudden it turned into a development with a grocery store, and they were not engaged. You can Google this up there. It's not particular it's not right in District 3, but it is part of Snohomish County. So I can stop there because I'm so passionate and adamant that we must engage the people who live in these communities, or we're just doing top-down politics.
All right, great. Any other comments on the Growth Management Act specifically? We'll get into things about infrastructure, transportation as much as we can. I know those are big issues in the area. All right. So let's go to the second one. I want to make sure that we're going to have two different questions here. One's going to be dealing with the homeless population, and one is going to be dealing with some of the drug problems. I don't want to confuse the two or have anyone idea that we're confusing the two. So on the homeless one, let's try to keep just on the housing issue, and then we can get into drug policy, local policies after that. I know they can be sometimes related in those communities because people are in dire straits. So, first question really is how can Snohomish County and the County Council specifically address the growing homeless population issue, the spread of it from Seattle, and some of the urban camping, as I like to call it, that has been starting to occur in our areas, as well as the people using their vehicles and parking them in unincorporated Snohomish County because the laws are a bit less. You can park longer in Snohomish County than you can in some of the city areas, so that's also an issue with the homelessness. How can we address those three kind of interrelated issues? Ms. Hack.
As I said earlier, we are in a housing crisis. I'm seeing this every single day. And what excites me is the work already being done, right, by the council. So if you look at the 0.01% sales tax, I know that there were disagreements about that, but the millions of dollars now that are in process to be collected as revenue, the hotels that are being purchased, I mean, 2 already, right, in Snohomish County. There is not one size fits all for the homeless issue. And every day I see that families living in cars need one solution. Individuals who have mental issues or addiction problems need another solution. I'm excited that we're funding housing as a priority in our county. I'm excited, and I'm gonna touch on drugs, and that we're funding behavioral health. Because I truly believe we're all gonna be better off when we do not have people living on the streets. We do not have families living in their cars. No one wants to be in that situation. And I'm so hopeful on how we can build on this progress that we've made and excited about what we can do in all shapes and forms.
All right. We'll go down this direction. Let's go to Colin, since he didn't speak on the last subject.
Well, you know, it strikes me as it's a little bit jarring to hear, you know, excitement about where we are with the homeless population right now. I work with individuals who are suffering from being unhoused every single day. And right now, the main response to that is that the sheriff deputies go and pick them up, run sweeps through homeless camps, and then put them in jail for any various ID issues. Whether it's warrants, thefts, trespassing, all sorts of things. And the number one thing that I talk to these folks about is that they don't have the services. We are not funding enough mental health services in Snohomish County. We simply aren't. Last year, the legislature passed the mental health sentencing alternative for felons who are for individuals who are convicted of felons who have mental health issues, so that they can get into treatment rather than sitting in prison and doing nothing with their time. In Snohomish County, there have been 3 sentences handed down for that since then, that I'm aware of. Those folks that are trying to get into those services require a plan in place before they can even do it. You have to meet with a mental health professional, you have to present the plan, and you have to go before the court. Well, when there aren't any mental health services being funded in the county, these folks are just going to end up sitting in prison. And with no benefit to them, and no benefit to the rest of us. Because folks who sit in prison and then get out again with no resources when they were released from custody, have no way to bring themselves up, to pull themselves up. So, the homeless population, what can we do? Well, the bridge housing program that the council's recently approved and purchased those hotels is fantastic. Can't argue with that at all. It does not, however, help individuals who have homeless families, because those are for single individuals in housing. And it's fantastic that they have access to services through that bridge housing. But again, those services are going to have to be fully funded. And unless we can do that, we're going to keep seeing the same issues. And it's only going to get worse as the light rail station opens up in Edmonds, and the light rail station opens up in Linwood. We have to address those issues from that perspective. We also need to reopen the Office of Neighborhoods through the Sheriff's Office, staff that particular office, or I guess, whatever you call it, but the Office of Neighborhoods that was created needs to be re-engaged through the Sheriff's Department so that those folks can have initial contacts from non-law enforcement so that they can provide those services to them.
Thank you. All right, Nas?
Okay, so, the homeless issue is an issue that we keep looking at the affordable housing and what is happening in our communities, that we have so many homeless people, and of course, he said to keep it away from the opioid crisis. However, it is very important to understand that it is because of the social inequities and racial inequities that we are experiencing currently that people are not having economic freedom or economic ability to be able to afford housing. The fact remains that federal wage is $7.25 minimum wage, and 20 years later it is $7.25. So that is the root of, to my opinion, besides the opioid crisis, is the racial, social, and economic inequities that is driving the homelessness. And I really admire Executive Summers for providing 165 rooms by purchasing these hotels, for doing action, doing something about it. However, we need to be looking at this at a deeper level and to see what can we do to bring economic values that supports every family. So there is not such huge disparities that is driving the homelessness and the opioid crisis, which I think is also a very important part of it. However, affordable housing, we keep talking about affordable housing. Well, if people cannot have jobs that they can afford housing, they're gonna continue to be more and more homeless people. And as we are dealing with opioid crisis, these are fueling each other. And it's becoming more and more of an issue which will not, is not going to be resolved by putting them more in hotel rooms, because what we need is the wraparound services that will put these people in, have help that they can become, again, members of the community so they can support themselves. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. A lot of passion here. I love it. All right, John?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for exactly what you're saying. We as a nation have been underfunding mental health and housing since the 80s. And we're paying the price right now, along with the pandemic, along with the ravages of climate change is another deal. I chair the Housing and Human Services and Veterans Committee in Olympia, and so this is an issue that I'm very passionate about. And really one of the reasons I finally decided to jump into this race was because of the great work that the county did by purchasing those hotels, bypassing the sales tax to make sure that we can actually pay for those services by bringing in, well over $20 million a year with that very modest sales tax. So I appreciate the work that the county council has done. But yeah, we have kind of the emergency side of housing, so the hotels will help finding more available land to do emergency housing, like the pallet shelter, I just took a tour of the pallet shelter up in Everett. I'm working with Edmonds Community College to see if they might have space to put a pallet shelter community. But these are emergency. These aren't the long-term solutions. But we know we need to get people off the streets. I took a day-long tour with the Needle Exchange Program up in Everett. And intellectually, I know intellectually everybody on this panel knows and out here knows how bad it is, but when you see it up front, I really appreciate the work that Chris is doing with VOA. To see that up front, the work that Colin's doing when it comes to people that are showing up in court. But it's disheartening, it's shocking, but we know that we can do better. And so it's about funding. It's about making sure that we're spending the money where we need to, making sure that we're not criminalizing homelessness. I am damned embarrassed by my city councilman Edmonds for criminalizing homelessness. And I appreciate former council member Adrian Friendly-McNillis for speaking up, because man, I'm steamed about that. And we can't allow that kind of mentality to happen. It's gonna happen more and more. Town of Woodway is looking at passing a similar ordinance. So right here in the 3rd district, we might have 2 cities that are passing these draconian ordinances against homelessness.
All right.
So I will do whatever I can on the county council and in the state, and just as a citizen to make sure that these are our friends and neighbors. They're not, and I just want to push back a little bit on the question. You said people coming up from Seattle. No, these are our friends and neighbors. These are people that are from Snohomish County that are homeless, that are getting evicted. So it's not an upsurge from somewhere else. These are our neighbors. So we need to make sure that we're taking care of them.
Apologies if there was a misunderstanding on that. I was just more, as we see this homeless problem grow, we see it in our communities. We saw it in Seattle first. I didn't mean to suggest that there was transportation. No problem. All right. See some hands. Somebody jump up.
I'm
All right.
biting on this one.
Go for
Yeah,
it.
she's just jumped, she's like at the edge of her chair for
All right,
it.
go for
Well,
it.
I've been working on the homeless issue for over 5 years as an elected official, and I'm very passionate about this. First off, I was appointed with Judge Colburn to create the new drug court that occurred in Edmonds, which allowed people that had fines to be able to get to the courthouse, to be able to pay their fines. If not, what other ways they could settle issues. So that was one part of the homeless issue. The bigger issue is I started a task force in Edmonds and had to do with homelessness, and we hired a company by the name of Kone Report, and Kone. And if you're really interested in looking at it, go to the Edmonds website, go to the City Council, and take a look at the Kone Report, which will tell you anything you could possibly want to know, because it's very systemic in all of our cities. It's just really not for Edmonds. And actually the highest homeless population are children. They're couch surfing, they're staying in hotels, they're staying with family members. That actually was the highest level of homelessness. And then from there comes families and comes seniors and veterans, and our most vulnerable population are the ones that have nowhere to stay. And how do we cure that, you say? Well, it's not exactly we're going to fix it today or tomorrow. We have to provide wraparound services for these people. We have to get them housing. We have to get them off the streets. Statistics have shown that when people are homeless and are on the streets, they end up many times moving to using illegal drugs and alcohol just in order to deal with life itself. So you've got to provide housing, you've got to provide drug treatment, you've got to provide alcohol treatment, you've got to provide mental health treatment, you've got to provide vocational training, because sometimes people get so wrapped up into what's going on with them, they lose all the ability to actually take care of themselves. So we have to do this as a society. If we don't do this, we are going to continue to have more and more and more homeless people. So you've got to provide the wraparound services. And we have to start looking at homeless people as human beings. That's my biggest problem, is when you look at homeless people, people won't even look at you in the eye. You cannot, I firmly believe people do not choose to be homeless. There are a very small percentage, Kone Report will show you that. Very few actually choose to be homeless. So we need to get these people off the streets. And I'm very pleased with Dave Summers and what he's done, but I would look at modeling more what King County's done. Dow Constantine has been buying hotels now for about 1.5 years. And he has more and more and more hotels, and he's constantly doing it to try and deal with this. So anyway,
All right.
as we can see, you know, this is where, oh, and by the way, I was not on the Edmonds City Council when they decided to ban being homeless and poor in Edmonds. That occurred after I left the council. I want to make that really clear. I think that that is a big mistake that they've done, because it just further exacerbates the problem.
Thank you very much. Madam Trees?
Yes, thank you, I do. We're talking about shelter and we're talking about housing. I am really happy that we're getting shelter. We obviously need shelter. We've got to get hotels, we've got to get people off the street so there can be access to what people need. But here's another thing we need to talk about. And also the Edmonds School District is doing that right now. We decided it's over 700 homeless students. It's just unacceptable. So we took action. We surplus property and partnered with Housing Home to start building housing for our students. I mean, that's number one. How can you learn if you're don't have a home?
right.
How can you learn if you don't have food?
You're sleeping in a
Access
car.
exactly, sleeping in a car, access to, so we see this emergency, but look what's happening right now. We need to get the profit-driven developers away, let me rephrase that. We need public housing. We need public housing that is built for public housing, not built for a profit. And I believe that we can do that. With strong advocates in Olympia, we have the resources that we can build public housing, because if you are a business that's doing development, your goal is profit. I want to see the goal as housing our people, and we can do that with public housing. And I think every single municipality needs to be looking at that, not just buying the hotels that need to be retrofit, but when we're looking at development and the property that the state, that the counties, that the school districts own, look at that as a goal to have public housing that is affordable. The other thing that goes in with, we need to have family wage jobs. Our students need to have access to multiple pathways that they can be successful in life, such as prevailing wage jobs that our union brothers and sisters offer, but the many pathways to success. So it's not just, number one, get the public housing. Number two, make sure that we are adequate, well, of course, wraparound services. I don't want to repeat that because I think everyone on this panel is going to align with that. I just don't hear anyone talking about public housing right now. And that is a specific need that we can address right now. We can do it, and that's one of the things that I've been working on lobbying with our colleagues in Olympia on.
All right. Everything down?
Yes. Yes, well, homeless is a so sensitive topic. Here in the city of Linwood, we allocate ARPA funds for rehousing program with Volunteers of America, and we did that recently. I'm agree with the hotels that they bought already, but with that, we have to be aware that we have to offer a lot of resources coming with that, which is mental health and the health disparities that exist across. And yet the District 3 is one of the districts that's most diverse. And that's one of the reasons that I put my name here, because I'm bilingual and there are almost 40% the people of color that live in this district. And yet we don't have the resources. It's a lack of information with our community in order to pass the voice to that. So human services, well, we have to talk and we have to work and collaborate across the country in order to addressing that issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. As promised, we'll skip from that, or jump from that over into kind of the drug issue in our county. We know that there is an opioid crisis, as well as just a non-related to opioid drug crisis that we've been dealing with for decades now. How would you approach these issues of the opioid crisis, the just standard drug use, and especially the growing instances of open-air drug markets, as some people are calling them, or just very public areas where you can see it going on? How do you think the county should address this? Again, we're doing well on time, but let's just start over here on this side for once.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gonna start
Sorry, yeah.
dodging
Yeah,
things.
She's jumping up and down, yeah.
Yeah, this is another area that I've been very passionate about over the last 10 years. I dealt with this a lot in the Snohomish County Health Board, and we looked at frequently opioid use and drug use, and unfortunately, fentanyls came into the market, which is much more than the opioid use at this point, and much, much more deadly, and much cheaper. So I think that's important for people to understand that opioids are starting to become a thing of the past, and fentanyl's starting to take over that level. But that being said, you have to go after the big drug dealers to begin with. You have to put money towards going after those drug dealers, and all the way down the chain to the person that's doing the drugs. We have to provide treatment, and we have not done a good job there either in ensuring that the most vulnerable in our communities are getting that level of treatment that they need. And it really comes down to, again, money, and where do you prioritize money? Where do you get the money, and where do you prioritize the money? But if we want to do something about the drug use in our city, we have to crack down on the dealers. I don't know if anybody knows this, but I was in contact with the DEA while I was on the Snohomish County Council, or excuse me, Snohomish Health District. I'm jumping the gun there. Anyway, and they actually told me that any one time there is a car coming up I-5 loaded full of drugs such as fentanyl, opioids, whatever else is in it, and a car going down I-5 at the same time. These cars actually pull into a house in Snohomish County. Residential house, residential neighborhood. The house, the upstairs part of the house is rented. It's rented by a family who don't pay rent. And the bottom part of the house, these drug dealers pull right into the garage, unload their stuff into the basement, which is isolated from the upstairs, get back in their car, and they drive right back down I-5, back down to California again, and get more drugs. We have a very high amount of drug use going back and forth, and we're not going to be able to stop this until we actually get funding out there to get drug enforcement agents out there, and to get people out there to provide services also to those that are addicted.
Thank you.
So, sorry.
No, it's perfectly fine, perfectly fine. Let's go to Mr. McMahon.
Thanks. So, I mean, obviously this ties in heavily to my current role as a public defender as well, right? I, again, am dealing with folks every day who are in various stages of addiction, various stages of drug interactions. It was mentioned earlier that when people are unhoused, they often will turn to drugs and alcohol. That is very true. The reason why that happens is because it's unsafe to live on the streets. Folks end up using meth so that they can stay awake at night, so that they don't fall asleep and get robbed. That is literally what is happening on the streets of Snohomish County. The drug crisis isn't a new thing. This has been going on for nearly 100 years, since the war on drugs started, right? We have a ton of data, and yet we keep going back to the same tired responses to this crisis. What studies have shown is that when you go away from forced abstinence and forced treatment, and instead provide housing first, and then additional services, the prevalence of drug abuse in the community reduces. You see in Vancouver, BC, they have safe injection sites. Safe injection sites are a very hot topic. A lot of people don't like the idea of it because a lot of people just want abstinence. Well, when people can use safely, wean themselves off of these drugs if they choose to do so, then we're looking at more safety throughout the entire community. There's less instances of folks who feel the need to use drugs just to keep themselves awake so they don't get robbed. There's less instances of folks who are using drugs who have to then turn to whatever method of making money that they can, right? So then people who are using the drugs are safer, people who are not using the drugs are safer, the entire community is safer, and everybody is doing better. It starts with housing. It requires a compassionate response to the individuals who are suffering from whatever addiction and the reason why they got into that addiction in the first place. Forced abstinence isn't going to do it. It never has, it never will. We need to have better responses to these issues.
All right. We'll go Naz, and then we'll go to Ms. Ack.
So, being in healthcare, being in a community health center, I see how this is a revolving door for many of the people who have this issue. Those are the lucky ones who have had the opportunity to come to the community health center to get some kind of treatment, get some kind of help. However, we need to change the way, we need to change the system. We need to have people, as it goes with homelessness, with the opioid crisis, is to make sure we have people who do provide the wraparound services to make sure that they can get the help that they need. This is an ongoing, as you mentioned, this has been going on for 100 years, but we are at a breaking point. We are at a point that the economic inequities and the disease that is rampant in our community, which is the disease of addiction. And I really support Senator Jesse Solomon's proposal for studying the psilocybin and having psilocybin treatment, because it has been proven that it does stop addiction. However, because of the big pharma wanting to continuously keep the young people on these opioids that they are providing, I forgot the name, Suboxone or Suboxone, thank you, yeah. To continually feed that to keep on going. So there are alternatives if we can think outside the box as to what we can do for the opioid crisis, but it needs to be looked at as a disease rather than a criminal act. And this disease is getting worse and worse by the day by the economic inequities and the racial and social inequities that the issues of homelessness is creating. Because I heard from a friend who works with homeless people, I'm not sure if the statistics is correct because this is a friend that I'm quoting, she said 95% of the homeless people have drug issues and are dealing with the opioid crisis. So that is a very high statistics and high number, and I was very shocked to hear that. But as you also mentioned, again, they are trying to stay awake so they don't get robbed, and they're just stuck in this cycle that continues to just keep repeating, and we really do need to change the system and think outside the box to do something different.
All right.
So we know that this is complex and it's multi-layered. So I think there's no one solution, right? There's a number of things that you have to do. So one thing, and I'm not excited by homelessness. We've not been doing enough clearly about that or addiction, right? But I'm hopeful at the funding that's starting and where we could take it. So I do not think we should be criminalizing homelessness. We should not be criminalizing drug use and addiction. We should do more to catch the drug dealers. Please understand that. Work that is being done underway, multi-layered, are teen courts. I'm fortunate to work with staff that are working on that in another county. We have staff actively working. Actually, I've been actively working with the city of Everett on a pallet shelter solution. They are for women and children to get them out of cars, get them out of couch surfing. And I'm tying housing into the drug issue because we do know if you can't lock your door and you don't feel safe, you are going to often self-medicate to make yourself better, right? To make yourself feel better to deal with the situation you're in. When I worked at Cocoon House, where we provide services and housing to youth and teens, 40% of all street youth are LGBTQIA. These are complex issues. A high number of those are addicted, and they're dealing with drug issues and mental health issues. Fundamentally, we need to be doing more with our young children to help them not have trauma as they grow in their life that's going to turn into an addiction. We need more school counselors. We need more parent supports. We need more early childhood. Adverse childhood events can cause the trauma that lead to homelessness, that lead to addiction. So it's getting to the root when kids are young and working with teens who are starting to go on that path to give them the supports that they need, so they're not in that kind of situation. Housing first is so important to get folks off the street, to give them a door they can lock so they can actually wrap their minds around. How can I actually deal with everything else I need to, whether it's addiction or employment or education, to deal with the basic needs and allow case management and the wraparound services to be there for them.
Wonderful. All right. Mr. Peterson.
Thanks, Micah, and thank you everybody for, this, yes, I agree. If you think I get fired up about issues around homelessness,
Yeah.
I get fired up about issues around opioid use, and that's from family tragedy. A 20-year-old cousin who overdosed 10 years ago, my brother overdosed 10 years ago, another relative who overdosed about 5 years ago. So this is happening, everywhere across the country. I'm super proud of the work I've done in Olympia on the issues around opioids, especially teaming up with Lauren Davis from the 32nd District. She's amazing when it comes to this issue. And she and I were recently appointed as opioid fellows with the National Council of State Legislators. So I went to a conference in Denver to talk specifically about opioids. Fortunately, the next conference was also about housing and homelessness, so I got to go to that too. So there is definitely a relationship, but we need to make sure that we, they've said it, we need to provide our services. We cannot rely on the war on drugs. We all know that is a war that was lost before it even started, back in the Nixon era. And thank you for pointing out the incredible racial disparities when it comes to the war on drugs. And that's the concern I have when we talk about law enforcement. And it's, sure, the big drug dealers, the Sackler family, for example, yes, we really need to work on seeing how those massive pipelines of drugs are coming in, but the racial disparities when it comes to arrests around both drug use and drug dealing, the number of women that are serving in prison because their boyfriend is having them hold the goods is unconscionable in this country. And it's happening here in Snohomish County, it's happening here in Washington, but certainly this is a national issue. So I'm proud of the work that I've done, working with legislators across the country, working with advocates across the country. If you are concerned about overdose in your family, carry naloxone, you can get it from the health agency. Thanks, Adrian, for the work you've done on the county health agency when it comes to naloxone and that availability. I have some in my car, because if you see somebody overdosing, whether it's accidental or they're intravenous drug user, or now smoking fentanyl, we're not seeing that intravenous use as much. Carry that and save somebody's life. If you're at all interested, there's overdoselifeline.org is a group that's started by my cousin who lost her son, her 20-year-old son. She's in Indiana, but it's an incredible resource if you're concerned about how you can engage in your community and how you can help save somebody's life when it comes to that simple use, not simple, but relatively simple use of naloxone.
Thank you very much. Please.
Well, the opioids, we have to work with compassion, and we have to bring up all the actors together, which is the families, the schools, counselors, legislators, but very much we have to work in the grassroots with the communities, and also we have to acknowledge, as I mentioned before, all the BIPOC community that live in the District 3. We have to address it and collaborate also, perhaps with the Mexican consulate, perhaps with the Peruvian consulate, perhaps with Guatemalan consulate. Why? Because they are the ones that care about their people, the immigrants. We are we work closely with the Mexican consulate. They have areas, and which is one area, the protection, and they work a lot in the programs with domestic violence, and they work together with if somebody is deported or not. So there are a lot of resources that maybe we don't acknowledge, but there's collaboration with the authorities as well. Thank you.
Okay. Please.
I really appreciate the passion and the advocacy for treating our neighbors and friends who are struggling with addiction as people first. So I just want to acknowledge that on this panel, because it's very heartening. We know that access to services, access to support if somebody's trying to get into recovery, to address the specific question, is something that we in each of our jurisdictions are doing. That is why we're opening up the first school-based health center in Snohomish County, so that those people, those students who need access, can have easier access to support services. Some among those mental health and recovery. But really what I want to talk about is I was talking to a PCO in the 21st about this, saying, hey, what are your priorities? And she was telling me that we think we're doing this great job by sending out, for instance, yes, we're sending social workers out. That is excellent. However, it's not helping for those people that really are vulnerable and want to access recovery if we send a social worker out dressed as a police officer with counselor or social work on their back. That's something that, unless you talk to the people that are impacted, that we're trying to access with these supports, that is a big misstep that can happen. That's something I think we can fix easily. Change the outfits. When on the snow, I mean, and that's real, right? That is a real thing. The Human Rights Commission, Snohomish County Human Rights Commission, when I was chair, we were very supportive of the Office of Neighborhoods. That is a vital service to get people trained to access the encampments, access people that are further from healthcare justice, further from access to meet them where they are and see how they can be helped. And so specifically, taking a look at how we are really accessing by changing the social worker, just asking the people that want to have recovery, ask them how they can be accessed and what are we doing wrong right now. We just found out what thing we're doing wrong. Funding the Office of Neighborhoods. There's a vital service that the county was providing that is no longer funded. And so that needs to be reprioritized when we're looking at the budget. There's more, but I do know that it's 5:15.
Yes.
And
so we've got about 30 minutes left. Okay. Yep, I was gonna definitely address that. I've got a lot of questions here. Again, if you have any more, try to get them to me quickly here. What I'm gonna try to do is there's a lot of we talk about intersectionalism and a lot of these problems are interrelated. So I'm gonna try to address as many of these subjects in one question as possible. You guys can kind of go the direction you want, but we'll try to address this. This comes across in a couple different areas. Just trying to figure out the right way to kind of put the question. So with all of the growth in the area, we know that there's a lot of concern over zoning. There's a lot of concern over the growth of or the loss of our forests that are local. Loss of really big old trees that are, the environmental impact of building denser and denser residential areas. The risks, I know that one of the candidates that was trying to join the board of the fire district was very concerned with these very dense, they called them row houses, or these houses where it's just right next to one another, so it can just tear through these neighborhoods. I know personally in my neighborhood, we've lost 2 or 3 of the main forests just in my precinct alone, and had probably about 50, 60, 70 houses put in those areas. So it's growing, it's putting a tax on the infrastructure as well. So we've got a couple different things here: zoning, the loss of our forests, and the infrastructure to support the growth. Address whichever one you want, but again, we're gonna try to keep this one, I'm gonna be a bit stricter on time on this so we can just get to 1 or 2 more questions after this. So who wants to pick one of those kind of 3 intersectional things to talk about?
I'll get it the first shot. So I'm on the Edmonds Tree Board, and that is a fairly recent thing. But I did it because not only do I want to learn more about that topic and the current regulations in the city of Edmonds, I want to be able to bring the knowledge that I've gained in Human Services, but also Planning Commission. Currently, I sit on the County Planning Commission, and before that was chair of the City Planning Commission. So with these issues being so complicated, it it's helpful to dive in from a number of directions. So I fully believe you can have a couple of things, right? So if you focus on the main arterials and you build up first and foremost, I think you can get more affordable, low-income housing that way and not impact the green spaces and the trees. But one thing I hope to do on the Edmonds Tree Board is what we're doing is we're combing through the tree code so our community members can actually understand what it says and the intention of what we're trying to do, which is preserve the tree canopy in Edmonds and actually see if we can increase it. So I'm excited about that work. I think it can be done. We just need folks to be able to understand what the code is and need to understand why it's important for us to have the tree canopy and replace trees that are cut down. Try not to cut them down in the first place because we've got big, lovely trees there as well as in Linwood. But I think that you can do it all if you're smart and creative about it. We see work like this going all around the country without causing fire hazards, without breaking into more of our forests, because I agree that's a concern. I do want to maintain our tree canopy, if not increase it.
Beautiful, thank you.
I would like to talk about environmental issues. One of the things that concerns me a lot is, well, what's happened with farm workers. And that's a lot of opportunity to learn through the cultures that we serve. One of the things is farm workers, they are very much exposed in the pesticides. They work every day, and yet the contamination is huge. One thing as immigrants, refugees, and migrants that we come in here, sometimes in our own countries there's no part of our culture to go through because there are other priorities that we have to feed. So we come in here and yet we don't acknowledge maybe for the same reason, a cultural issue, but it's something that we face every day. And yet with those issues, it coming and affecting the health and the nutrition part. So it's something that we have to be focused, and I will be focused on that 100% and start working for grassroots like always I do with the community. Thank you.
So, the intersectionality of zoning and controlling growth is very important. They have done studies and socioeconomically, again, believe it or not, the areas that are economically and socially underrepresented, they have less trees in their environment, they have less green space, and therefore they have a lower quality of air in their area. Again, equity comes into conversation in every aspect of our life. No matter how we want to look at it, we see the healthcare inequities, environmental impact, the climate change, and all of that. It is imperative that we not only grow the green spaces that we have in South Snohomish County and Lakewood and Woodway, but make sure that all of this development that is happening, we will have green spaces added to the area. That's why I joined the Planning Commission, so that I could be bringing the lens of equity in the conversation for the planning for the next 20 years, for the city of Lakewood at least, so that we can make a difference. But I think it is so important to understand the environmental impact of the socioeconomic inequities that affects all of us.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
And I guess maybe to riff on that a little bit, we're doing a lot of work around zoning issues, also in Olympia, again, chairing the Housing and Human Services Committee, but working with the local government committee. And, you know, there is a direct line from the racist practices of redlining and exclusion. There's documented, like it's in the books about these certain people can't buy homes in this town. Like in Edmonds, in Linwood, in Shoreline, people of, and like the languages, Ethiopians and Chinese and Jews, it's written. But there is a direct line from that horrible racist language to single family zoning. Single-family zoning is created to exclude certain people from moving into our communities. Do we just blow up all single-family zoning? No, we're not coming at this with a giant sledgehammer. But we have to have these tough conversations about making sure that we are coming up with creative solutions. So instead of one house on a quarter acre, which is not an environment, when we talk about environmentalism of zoning, is not environmentally sensible at all. But can we put a duplex or a triplex, then also improve the environmental impact as well as the societal impacts? Try to create more affordable housing. Try to create homeownership opportunities, again, for the people that have been excluded from homeownership for decades in this country. So that's something that I want to bring to the county, and I think that's one of the reasons I want to serve on the county council, is because we can do a lot of policy work in Olympia, and I love policy work, don't get me wrong. But it's on the ground implementation that we can do at the county level, and somebody said before, really working with counties and cities, creating that bridge from the work that we're doing in Olympia down to the groundwork and the experiments that we can do with the county, with our cities, with partnerships, to make sure that we're creating these opportunities. Because until we kind of take that on, we're not gonna see the affordable housing that we need in Western Washington, or Eastern Washington, or Boise, Idaho. I mean,
Thank you.
this is all over the place.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're about to get all over the country there, I
Oh,
think.
Okay.
All right.
Can I go on this one?
Sure.
I'm really glad that red lighting's been brought up, that the impact of those historically marginalized communities and the impact of our systemic racism that's built into our structures is being addressed. And I appreciate that being brought up because it is real and it's something that we need to be addressed at all policy levels. Briefly, what we really need to do with zoning and climate is sustainable growth, is we need to be looking at policies that do a rapid reduction of carbon emissions. So not only are we looking at our zoning, we're also looking at the rest of the practices that bring down carbon emissions with protecting our tree canopy, with electrification, with demanding LEED standards on every single building that's going up here, with making buildings solar ready like we're doing at the schools right now. Those are some of the things that are encapsulated when we just say zoning and climate. It is a full package and it needs to be addressed by people who understand the complexities of it and will align with the values of sustaining our environment in the practices as we go for growth development.
All right. Okay.
Like me.
I want to get to a few more of these. We do want to leave time for you guys to kind of have that time to talk about whatever you want for a couple minutes. So we are rapidly approaching that. We got about 5 minutes left in this section.
Can I answer the question too?
Definitely. So just try to keep any additional ones. I apologize. This always happens. We get near the end and we're trying to compress everything. So if you can be specific, targeted at solutions and brief, that's awesome. Thank you. Go ahead.
Brief.
I'm trying.
No, I'm talking to, I served 12 years, as I've said before, on the Edmonds City Council, and I've done a lot of environmental stuff. Zoning in Edmonds is always a moving target. I helped, and sometimes when we create zoning, we don't always create zoning where we think through our zoning. And a good example of that is the tree code. I assisted in writing the tree code for Edmonds to increase the canopy, but what we didn't look at really hard is what happens when people want to develop their lots. What do we do then? And currently, you know, if you have a lot in Edmonds and you have trees, there's an expensive fee to take down those trees, and arborists come in, and there has to be a happy medium somewhere, and I think that's really clear when we're talking about zoning, the environment. You know, I assisted Councilmember Wright actually on the salmon habitat for the Minoteo Beach Recovery Program. And again, we had the railroad pushing back on the county and the biologists and, you know, for the salmon recovery. So I'm not sure that it's so great that we don't look at all sides of the zoning sometimes, in my experience as an elected. it's been a real eye-opener for the marsh and the salmon recovery of the marsh. And at one point, some on the council wanted to pave over the marsh, and it really becomes okay, so what is realistic for paving? What is the realistic paving? Buffers. Where do we go with this? So anyway, I don't mean, but listening to everybody, it really brought up a lot of thoughts of how we do this in a way that makes more sense than what we've been doing, which is spot zoning predominantly.
Beautiful.
Very brief.
Yes.
So I think the reality of the situation we talk about is that more multifamily zoning is going to be required because more people are going to be moving to Snohomish County, especially Linwood and Edmonds. Right? As more transit comes in, more people come in, they can work further away and live here. We're gonna need more multifamily zoning, we're gonna need to address the infrastructure issues, because we talk about the environment, not much is worse for the environment than a bunch of cars, but they're even worse for the environment when they're just sitting idling and not even moving anywhere, right? And that's another thing that we have to address. I used to live in unincorporated Snohomish County in Linwood, Market Lake area, and I spoke with a lot of folks there back in 2020, early 2020, before COVID, and one of the main concerns of folks there was that there was tons of apartments being built, townhouses, all these other things being built, and no one was really addressing the roads and how people were gonna get around, because while you have those arterials with buses and services and things like that, folks that live away from those still have to, or often do, drive to them. They drive to the freeway, they drive to 405, they drive to I-5. In Linwood, there are so many terrible intersections where people are just sitting forever, especially over by Costco. I don't know if you've folks have been there, but it's awful. So those are the kinds of solutions that we are absolutely going to need to bring, and that's
Good for a sign lady.
that's
When life gives you gridlock, politicians start advertising. Beautiful. All right, so I've got probably going to be two questions here that are yes or no only. You can say both if you'd like, if you want to be slippery. But yes or no only. There's a question here about the ban on fireworks, being on the South County Commission. There was a ban on fireworks, but not a ban on sale of fireworks in unincorporated Snohomish County. This is something that we've actually are trying to work with the county council on. I didn't write this question, but somebody did submit it, so I will ask you: do you support a ban on the sale of fireworks in the areas where the fireworks are banned for use?
yes,
Yes.
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 Absolutely.
So I live there, so yeah.
That's an easy one. All right, cool. And then, this one's hard to do a yes or no question on. There's talk of increasing the number of flights that come into Painfield. CCD3 is right underneath, right in the flight path. So, do you support no? I'm going to go no additional flights, limited, or you think that it should grow naturally?
Limited.
Grow naturally.
Limited.
Limited.
No.
Limited because I want to see the environmental impact statement
Yeah.
before I begin.
Give them an inch, they'll take a mile. All right, that brings us to the end. We're going to try to give you about 2 minutes. If you can use less, that would be great, because we have about 13 minutes for 14 minutes worth of content. We are going to just do this randomly. I'm going to start with Ms. Crosby.
What, the intent?
Just, this is your 2 minutes. This is your intro, your stump speech, whatever you want to put in it. Go.
Your 2 minutes.
Well,
Can I ask you to, let's stand up for me.
Yeah, if you please stand up so the people in the back who haven't seen you all the time can hear you.
perfect. Well, many people ask me why I'm running. I'm running because I'm qualified. I'm current elected official. I'm chair of the Snohomish Health District. I am member of the Volunteers of America Steering Committee, to which Council Stephanie Wright just gave $1 million to the neighborhood center. I'm well educated. I provide community engagement. No one's they're running, I'm sorry, but I'm in the grassroots all the time. I'm electable. I won my seat with 58% of the vote of over 4,300 votes against the Republican chair of the 32nd. I am a qualified woman of color, a mother, a businesswoman, an elected official, and an immigrant that will retain this seat for us. So I'm running because I belong to the BIPOC communities that live here in the 43, in the District 3. And I'm nervous, yes. If I'm nervous, well, I stop being human. I think so, right? So thank you, and
Be wonderful.
thank you so much.
All right, next random, we're gonna go Colin.
Okay, well, so as any of you who received my email where I was announcing my campaign, the email sent to the PCOs, probably know why I'm very passionate about a lot of the issues that I'm passionate about. Those mental health issues, those drug issues, the issues related to folks that are unhoused. I grew up in a family where we were unhoused often. My parents were both addicted to opiates and methamphetamine. My father took his life when I was young, and those are the things that built and established the person that I became. That's why I work with the Mental Health Advisory Council. That's why I'm a public defender. That's why I advocate so strongly for the people that I have the privilege to advocate for. That's what I want to keep doing in the county council. I hope that you all will give me your support, that you'll vote for me to be in the top 3, and then we can move through the council, vote, and have me added to the council both this year and again in the general election next year. Thank you.
I think that was about 1:10. If anyone wants to do better and shorter, you're welcome to challenge that, but we're good. So the next one, I'm gonna go over here to Adrian.
Oh, Lordy. Well, I've done a lot of work in the last 12 years. I've done a lot of work at the county level in the last 12 years, and before I was elected, I was a volunteer on various boards and commissions up in the county. I won't go into it. But what I've done on the Edmond City Council in the last couple of years that's noticeable is that I initiated the homeless task force, I co-authored the safe gun storage law, I wrote the Safe City Code for the City of Edmonds. I initiated the opioid task force for the city. I initiated a styrofoam ban for the environment. I co-initiated and served for 5 years on the Diversity Commission. Actually, I co-initiated it with Councilmember Peterson and I actually did the Diversity Commission, and then I served for 5 years on it. I fought long and hard protecting that marsh. I stood up against the ferry connector when it really seemed like it was going to be ruining our environment. And I marched for George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And because of that, I was followed in my car. I had my garbage gone through multiple times. I had people threatening me at the council meeting that I was a cancer and they were going to remove me. I didn't stop. It didn't stop me from doing it, and it won't stop me again from doing it. Yes, they were successful in defeating me. Unfortunately, I lost that race. I've won 3 races to serve on the council 3 different terms. But would I do it all over again? Hell yes, I would, because I'm a Democrat. I'm a Democrat through and through, and they cannot silence me. I believe in our values, and I will always stand for our values, loud and proud. Thank you.
Tell anyone who was worried about a politician that's lost a race to look at any politician's record. Almost all of them have. All right, so let's go to Ms. Heck.
So here's what I believe. I believe we have a duty to care for those in need. As a leader, I will use my listening skills, my ability to dive into and tackle tough issues, and work with people from all backgrounds, all diversities, to come to solutions that really make sense. And what I'll fight for is I'm going to stand up for women's rights, the rights of our more marginalized neighbors, and I will fight for safe, affordable housing for all, along with responsible development. These are not perks or privileges to me. None of those things are. They are rights and priorities. What sets me apart from all of these individuals I really have a lot of respect for is the transition that I made from corporate sector to committing myself to our community years ago, and that I will continue to do. I will use my leadership skills to make a difference by listening to our community and to people with different values, use my empathy and collaboration skills, bring people together from different sectors as I do now to come up with solutions that make sense. And with all of those skills, I want to fight for you. Now, I do want to speak to the PCOs. You've got a big responsibility, and I truly respect that. I know that you'll be choosing the top 3, and I'm really hoping that you'll include me. Thank you.
All right, I've been using a random number generator here just so you guys know. The next one up is Strom.
Randy, that's awesome. That's Randy. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out tonight. And thank you for the questions. These are exactly the issues that I want to work on in Everett, in Snohomish County, directly in our communities, and the same issues that I've been working on in Olympia. As I mentioned in my kickoff, I'm super proud to be part of the most diverse caucus in the state of Washington, and the strength that brings, and the voices that brings, and the vision that brings to the legislation that we've been able to pass. So I'm super proud to have some incredible endorsements from my colleagues. I'm endorsed by Senator John Levitt, Representatives April Berg and Brandy Donaghy, Representative Lillian Ortiz-Self, the greatest seatmate that anybody can have. Endorsed by Jamila Taylor, who's the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, Monica Stonier, Leah Gregerson, and also in the environmentalists, labor. Mike Sells endorsed me just a couple of days ago when I called him. So these are the values that I carry in Olympia, and as Adrian said, these are the values that I'm not going to be quiet about. These are the values that we need to shout in Olympia, we need to shout about them in Everett, we need to shout about them in our neighborhood meetings in every place that we can go. And that is what I'm going to do. I've been elected, I've just won a primary where they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in South Snohomish County. The Republican Party spent over $500,000 in South Snohomish County going after my Democratic colleagues, our friends and neighbors. If we don't think that they're going to do that next year when it comes to a county council race, we're fooling ourselves. I have a proven track record of working hard, of getting out there and knocking on doors and getting elected, and that's what we need to make sure we do next year, because they have deep pockets. They've got people donating $1 billion to national Republican Party, machines, and they're going to spend that money on local races. They've done that to take over school boards across the country, and here in Washington, they've done that to take over city councils in Edmonds, and they'll do it again. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm fighting for democracy. We all have to stand up and make sure that democracy lives another day in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Close pass. We're flipping the coin. Nods. Google.
As I mentioned, I'm adamantly pro-choice. Right now, women are under attack by our highest court for the choices we make. So it matters what we do. Representation does matter. So I bring skills and knowledge developed through long-time civic engagement and public service with the city of Linwood and Snohomish County. Our county is growing rapidly and becoming more diverse by the day. Without recognizing the existence of social inequality, racial and social injustices of our community, we continue to be hurtful to the vulnerable communities who have no choice but live with the real consequences of racism, sexism, homophobia, and all other forms of discrimination and prejudices. As we know, what systematic and institutionalized racism has done. Some people run for office for the lived experience, while others, like myself, run because of our lived experiences. As a woman, an immigrant, and a member of the LGBTQ+ community, I know how important it is to have diverse representation in office. We need people on the Snohomish County Council who can bring to light the unique issues faced by minorities and contribute to solutions that meet the needs of our community. I strive to build relationships based on trust, respect, equity, and inclusion for all residents of Snohomish County. Thank you.
Me? Thank you, and I want to thank this panel. I'm honored to be among the 7 that are asking for your support to move forward to Snohomish County. So, I've got a bunch of stuff written down, but what I really want to talk about is what brings me here to run for this. I was brought up from that way, that you get an education, you give back to your community, and that is what fuels everything I do. You know that I serve on the Edmonds School Board in my 2nd term. You know a lot that I'm on the Human Rights Commission, that I've served on Charter Review. I have done this work with a passion to assure that the voices of those who are most impacted.
If you have anything to check out, we're going to give you the library card.
Get your library card, so yeah, get a library card because this is a really cool library. But those most impacted by the decisions we make must have a voice, and often that is forgotten when you're in the middle of these meetings and you think you've got this great idea, but hey, did you check? This is one thing. I had done a lot of due diligence when we were talking about some racial disparity issues in Snohomish, in our Edmonds School District, and I checked with the teachers. I checked out, I was doing my job, and we made a decision. And then my friend looked at me and said, Karen, did you ask any of the teachers of color? I said, oh my, I did not. And that has stood with me for years to remind me that you must be talking to the individuals that are most impacted. I'm glad that Strong brought up what we have to look at, that we have to protect this seat. My activism at the local level, at the state level, at the national level, leave me well suited to have a deep understanding of what it means to keep a Democratic seat. And make no mistake, South Snohomish County District 3 carries the county. We are the stronghold of the values that we want to bring forward to the entire county, but also our state and further on that to the nation. I know how to run these campaigns just because it's something I'm very passionate about. I have the experience, the support, and the education to adequately, I believe, represent your interests. Now the PCOs get this first vote. I have some information in the back. We all filled out questionnaires for the 32nd. I made copies of mine because I'm not sure if they were all available. I will happy to send it to you because I think that you need to have a real clear understanding of who it is that you're voting for and how they align with your values. You can't get that with us sitting up here in an hour. And so I am here and available. My door's open. Karen Chase, ready for the appointment. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.